Today on the TBN Israel podcast, we're talking about all the terrorists, the bad, the terrible, and the worse, who are being released in the new hostage deal. But before we get started, I'm Shoshani, and this is the one and only
Yair Pinto.
Pinto.
And if you're asking, we didn't, match the jackets on purpose. Even though Mati every day he calls me, says, "What are you wearing today? I need to have the same colors."
I send him a text message in front of the mirror.
Definitely.
Hey, what are you wearing?
Definitely not true. Tomer, I forgot to say hi. You have an amazing shirt. Your wife made it for you.
Yeah,
I know.
Out of bed sheet.
And we have some guests all the way from the Philippines. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming to being here with us in the podcast. And guys, whenever you're in Israel, give us a call. And you can also be here in the studio with us as we're recording this podcast every week. But let's talk about these terrorists. Today we're talking about, what is it? Total of 1,917 terrorists that are about to be released as part of this, total completion, if it will be completed, this ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel. I mean, is it good for us to release these terrorists in general because they would just kidnap more hostages?
Well, let's define our terminology, because I think the words, and we're going to get into this in depth today.
Words are important.
The words are super important when it comes to this discussion. Israel's releasing two main types of people. One, let's call them light terrorists and prisoners, and the other one are the heavy-hitting terrorists.
Murderers, convicted murderers.
But they're serial murderers.
Yes.
So there are people there who are being released, and this is the light side of the spectrum. There are those they've only murdered maybe one Israeli. They've only
attempted to carry out one terrorist attack.
They've only attempted to blow up on a bus full of people, but they only attempted to. Those are the light ones. The heavy-hitting terrorists, which are about 200 in the total deal. If we're looking at the grand scheme of the numbers, it depends how you try to assign them. They're people they're the masterminds behind terrorist attacks.
Yeah.
They're the ones who've sent out 3, 4, 5, 6 terrorist attacks. They're the national symbols of terrorism and Israel hating on the Palestinian side. That's the level of people. We're talking nation level arch terrorists. Those are the people that are being released.
Yeah.
And some of these people, and it's important for the viewers to understand this, these are names that are synonymous within Israeli households. We know them by name.
Because of the terrorist attacks they committed.
Yeah, and because maybe they were behind a series of terrorist attacks when we were,
Series of bombing attacks, suicide bombing attacks against Israel, when we were growing up in Jerusalem.
Exactly. And some of these were behind 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terrorist attacks. I remember we talked about this the other week, a couple of weeks back when they were initially releasing the first list of the terrorists to be released. And we'll get to the discussion in the Israeli government. There was in one of the papers in Israel ran like a story, which was who the heavy hitters were on that first installment and what they did. I didn't make it to the bottom of the list because and this is again, I'm in my early 40s. I remember personally the terrorist attacks that these people carried out.
Really?
This is because I said, remember the terrorist attack that happened in line number.
It's ingrained in our mind.
Exactly.
Definitely, because it was a very traumatic event.
Remember the bus that blew up on Jaffa Street on so-and-so day.
The Sbarro pizza place that blew up.
So-and-so days. I do remember. I know people. Tomer was there. Okay, I know people that were there. Remember the terrorist attack where the guy? Yes, I do. My next door neighbor was involved in that terrorist attack.
Of course, I remember these stories that a bus exploded. It's the same bus that me and my brother used to take to school every day. And just a bus between the buses that my brother took an earlier bus and I took a later bus, and the bus in between exploded.
Yeah.
It's like these stories, and everybody has these stories in Jerusalem.
I went down 2 stations before the bus exploded.
So you were on the bus with the terrorists.
Yeah, I ran to the bomb, and I got so filled with blood over there that they took me to an ambulance, because they thought I got hurt.
Yeah, so I want to say something that I think is important to clarify for our viewers. People outside of Israel might have the wrong impression, thinking that Israel rounds up random Palestinians, holds them in prison to be bargaining chips for whatever negotiation comes up.
No, if these people are in the streets, it jeopardizes the security of the Israelis, of the Palestinians. They're criminals.
They're arch terrorists. Yeah, they're the evil of evil. They are the people that should be tried in the international courts of justice.
Yeah, it's not like a prisoner exchange deal when you trade soldiers of World War II, German soldiers for Allied forces soldiers. It's not the same equation at all.
And I'm saying this because the Hamas are trying to paint a false picture where there's a moral equivacy between Israel and the Palestinians in the exchange deal.
Yeah.
Where the soldiers, well, they're criminals and we're releasing them, and you guys have criminals and you're releasing them. No, that's a lie.
Yeah.
The truth is very, very simple. Our soldiers are fighting a just war, and it's just on every level. It's just
international courts,
international courts, international law, international military law, Israeli law and Israeli martial law, and also basic human morality. Even on all those levels, what those soldiers did is legal and just.
And talk about the fact that most of the hostages are not even soldiers. They're just ordinary civilians.
Yeah, well,
Israeli civilians. Some of them are international citizens as well. U.S. citizens, UK citizens, and other countries. So
and they're trying to paint a picture where these people, they served in the army, so they're, they're morally compromised, and therefore it's justifiable to have them as prisoners. No, it's not. They're wrong.
Yeah.
And these are the guys on the other side, and we're going to go in depth into this. But I want to be very clear from the get-go in this conversation. The people we're talking about today are the worst of the worst. They are the outcome of a society that breeds violence systematically over decades.
Yeah.
They are the result of a religion that calls for martyrdom at the expense of others, not of self-infliction, but of bringing violence and death to other people.
And they call for a genocide of the Jewish people from the river to the sea. That's what they call for. They don't call for a two-state solution or for a coexistence situation.
What? The video with the reporter.
Yeah. But Tomer, before you keep going, maybe ask our viewers to subscribe.
I don't have a camera and a close-up, so it's better you're going to do that.
Excuses. But guys, thank you for being with us. And please subscribe, share this content, and help us spread the truth from Jerusalem to the nations. I wanted to share with you our sponsor for today's video, Vinya. Vinya supplements are pills made out of grapes. Capsules. Yeah. In Israel, here, it's an Israeli innovation that helps blood flow, helps your body work better, be better, feel better. Mati and I are both taking it.
Pro-level users.
Yeah, definitely. And if you want to get it for yourself as well, you can go to www.vinyatbnisrael.com and please insert the coupon code TBNIL to get your 10% discount. And, try it for yourself. It works for us.
Yeah, and I'll say this especially on this one, but even in general, we only recommend things that we've looked into. And in this case, both of us have been using it for an extended season, several years at this point. And the science behind it is ironclad. The efficacy is unquestionable. The positive effects, again, are well known and well documented. We highly and strongly stand behind the way this works.
And we feel it.
Yeah, we feel it.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Mati, how are we starting? Are we starting with top 10 terrorists, or we're breaking it down in a different way?
So I wanted to start from a different place. And I think understanding the morality part of it is super important. And we'll go into this later on, on the narrative of who these people are and how the Palestinian people look at them as heroes, et cetera, and how it compares to other nations' narratives.
Yeah.
But first I want to say that this is not an obvious conversation. The people of Israel engage in this deal where we're releasing, and I want to be honest here and open about the pain and the consequences of this deal. We are releasing people that are known terrorists and murderers. Their only profession ever has been to be terrorists and murderers. They've murdered their own people, they've murdered our people, and they will very likely continue to do so once they're released.
Yeah,
that is the reality.
Yeah, definitely.
What you can do is not release them, and that's exactly the point where it's not an automatic discussion of which ones are we releasing. There was an option, and there is today an option of the state of Israel of saying we don't want to exchange these people, and we made a decision as a government, and it wasn't a light decision, saying we are deciding to release the worst of the worst, the people that are the repeat offenders of acts of terrorism against the Israeli population in exchange for hostages that are held by Hamas. And that wasn't a light decision to make. and it wasn't something that was unanimously agreed on by Israeli society. There were violent demonstrations within Israel against the deal. And again, it's not against the hostages being released.
No, it's against the price that we need to pay and the risk to the security of the people of Israel, the state of Israel in the future. And we have examples from this war. I mean, Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, was released in a previous deal that we exchanged, what was it, 1,000 Palestinian prisoners, terrorists, from the Gilad Shalit
3,000.
soldier. 1,000, 3,000, something like that. Yeah, a lot of bad guys, definitely. And the numbers are like crazy, the amounts that we release for every soldier or citizen of the state of Israel.
You're right, 1,000.
Yeah, I know. Thank you, Mati. Can you say that again? I don't think the microphones heard you.
Yair, I was wrong. The number you stated was correct.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Let's let Yair have this because it doesn't happen often. Anyway, to your point though, so there's a huge discussion about this. I've personally driven through on my bike several like very, very angry demonstrations inside Jerusalem of people who were calling for the government not to go through with the deal. And again, it's not because someone says we don't want the hostages back. Members of the cabinet, so the smaller group within the government that makes these decisions, they voted against it, or they refrained from being part of the vote, not because they don't want the hostages back, because they say the price is too high for our society.
Yeah, can you give an example of an Israeli prime minister that I'm sure many of us know?
Yeah, we were talking
regarding hostage exchange deals.
So again, you listen to these kind of words, and it's so serendipitous when you look back and you hear the wisdom in it. Yitzhak Rabin, back in 1994, I don't remember.
Head of the Avoda.
He was the prime minister from the Labour Party, but Labour, you would affiliate it with leftist. He was more hawkish and right-wing than our current government.
Yeah, break the arm and legs.
Yeah, by far.
Said once.
Yitzhak Rabin is he was the only prime minister we've ever had assassinated. But the man was a fighter since the 40s.
He was a general.
He was
chief of staff.
Fighter, the commander of the battalions that freed Jerusalem in 1948. Then the chief of staff. Then the minister of defense. Then the prime minister of the country twice. A person that saw more war and casualties than almost anyone else in our leadership, including Ben Gurion, by the way. When you look at his personal involvement, he says in 1994 there's a soldier that's kidnapped. His name is Nachshon Wachsman. Anyone in our age group remembers that event.
Yeah.
He's kidnapped by terrorists. The terrorists bring out this very long list of demands. Give back the land, do this, do that, do this. And Yitzhak Rabin famously goes to the family of the soldier and says, I cannot agree to their terms. And the reason he says is because if I open this door, forever, Israeli soldiers will have the threat of kidnapping because they will know they can blackmail us to get this unfair advantage on us.
And this is where we are now.
And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah,
the Shalit, and I don't say this against Gilad Shalit, but the Gilad Shalit story, which is, if you're new to this story, he is a tank. Was he a driver? No, he wasn't a commander.
No, he was not commander. A gunner.
He was a tank gunner whose tank was on the Gaza border. It was hit by an ambush by Hamas terrorists. They killed.
I think we got some coffee, Mati.
Rachel, thank you so much. Typically, I make my own coffee. We're just on set.
Thank you.
Toda rabah.
This is a little espresso to wake up in the middle of the show.
I texted her before we started saying, I think Yair and I need to pick me up. It's already been a long day. Anyway, so to our point, so Nachshon Wachsman, he's kidnapped. They make a huge list of demand. The prime minister then says, listen, we just can't do what they're asking for because we're always going to pay the price.
Yeah.
We see that again and again, and especially with the Shalit deal. Gilad Shalit is kidnapped from the Gaza border from within a burning tank. At the time,
Hamas used the terror tunnel to infiltrate Israel behind the forces and then carry out the attack against the tank.
Yeah, and he's shell shocked. They pull him out, sort of semi-conscious,
disoriented.
They pull him out of the tank. We saw similar images also on October 7th.
Yeah.
He's held in captivity for 7 years? 8? I forget how many years.
I don't know.
Anyway, many years.
A few years, yeah.
He's held in captivity for quite a few years, and there's a public outcry for his release. And Hamas are very, very clever about the way they manipulate the public in Israel and really in getting support for Gilad Shalit's release. And Prime Minister Netanyahu, he's been Prime Minister for most of our adult life on and off. He releases over 1,000 terrorists. Included in that list are Ismail Haniyeh, Included in that list are many arch terrorists that have.
Sinwar.
Yeah, I'm not Haniya. What am I talking about? Yahya Sinwar.
Yeah.
I'm wrong on saying that. And countless others who've since then, I think it's in our cheat sheet created by Tomo earlier, over 85% of them have gone back to the path of terrorism.
And leading the Hamas
movement.
Attack and movement against Israel.
But let's also clarify, it's like, one, released prisoners typically go back to their crime. This is a global trend.
In general, whatever crime it is.
Yeah, because the word correctional facility is sugarcoating the fact that when you spend time with people that are worse than you in your criminal activity,
you don't get better.
You don't get better, you usually get worse.
Yeah.
There is a story that couple of the terrorists that got released didn't want to go on the buses because they've been sent to Gaza.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So they asked to change with it.
True, yes. So in the last week's exchange of Palestinian prisoners for the Israeli hostages, some Palestinian prisoners refused to go on the buses going to Gaza, and they preferred to stay within the Israeli prisons than to go back into the Gaza Strip at this time.
Well, let me ask you a question.
That's very interesting. I mean, I don't blame them.
Let me ask you a question, because this seems like an odd conversation. How do they have the right to refuse? I'm asking.
I don't think they had the right to refuse. They do. They stayed in the Israeli prisons.
No, I'll tell you why. Because the way the state of Israel operates, unlike Hamas, of course, is we do everything legally. So when these people they're not released from prison, they're pardoned by the Israeli legal system. So they receive a pardon from the Israeli court system.
For their previous crimes.
Yes, and the pardon is a deal, similar to what you would do in a plea deal with, someone who's accused or charged with a crime, and they say, well, look, you're going to admit to these things, and you need to promise to never go back to this behavior. So these people, when they're released, there's an agreement that's signed with them. And the agreements, it's a two-sided agreement. One is with the Hamas organization, with the U.S. as a mediator and others. And it says, look, Israel commits to releasing these people in exchange for these hostages.
Yeah.
And we also promise, usually it depends on the different agreement, we're not going to just round them up in 2 weeks and put them back in the prison. We're going to let them be free men unless they go back to active terrorism. And even then, there's usually a time frame where they can't be arrested, which is a year, 2 years, whatever. I'm not sure what it is in this agreement, because the full agreement hasn't been made public by the Israeli government for political reasons.
Okay.
But anyway, so these people sign an agreement that says, whatever your name is, look, you were a terrorist, we're going to let you out, but here are the terms of that release.
You go to Gaza, or you go to Turkey, or you go to Egypt, not to Judea and Samaria.
Was it Egypt? I thought it was Algiers. The last.
Also Algiers. Egypt, Algiers.
I didn't know about the Egypt part.
Turkey. Yeah, Hamas had also celebrations, mini celebrations for the release of the prisoners to Egypt.
Okay, so Egypt too, I wasn't aware of that. Mm-hmm. And they're saying we won't go back to terrorism.
Yeah, but it's very interesting. Maybe we can share with our viewers that in Israeli prisons, the Palestinian terrorists are also studying. They're getting, good food.
Yeah.
They get a place to sleep, medication if they need it. And basically, some of them exit the Israeli prisons with degrees and higher education than what they entered and what they would had, and free, all free.
And
we are paying for that, the Israeli people.
And a dad bod. Which is
they're eating well.
They're fat. Many of them when they come out, and it's almost amusing because it's been a point of contention within Israeli society, where people they're furious with the fact they say, like, these guys are murderers. How is it
we're treating them so well?
They're living a better life than some of the Israeli people. They get a free education. Again, we're talking advanced degrees.
University level education
for free. And they're fed, they live this very, again, it's changed a bit after the war started, and no one wants to be imprisoned, but still, it's not these harsh conditions the way people are
Definitely,
imagining.
They're not in a tunnel, not seeing the daylight for 15 months.
Yes.
Okay.
And so much so that when we get to the list, you'll see that some of them have so many freedoms that they committed crimes against the penitentiary system in Israel, while against the prison, the wardens in the prison, while they were in prison.
That's a wild story.
Yeah, we'll get to that later on. Anyway, so just to say, to wrap up this idea, huge debate within Israeli society, from the government level all the way down to the young people on the street. People are not in agreement over the fact that this is the right thing to do.
Everybody's happy that the hostages are being released, but nobody agrees on the heavy price we're paying.
So just yesterday I was in reserves, driving in a Jeep, And the guy who's next to me, who we're having this conversation, he says, well, what do you think about the hostage release deal? And you give them this very like political answer or PC answer.
Happy hostages.
Yeah, it's like you can never say no to the hostage release, and you can never say yes to the prisoner release, and yet you have to. And he says, look, you're not a politician. It's just me and you in the car. Let's talk real.
Like Dugri.
Yeah, let's talk real talk for a minute. So what do you mean? It's like we both know that to our area, and we'll get to this in the list of the prisoners, to the area I'm about to serve in again in reserves, prisoners are coming back and have already been released that are murderers. And they are going to cost the lives, and this is a real number here. The people that were released back into Judea and Samaria, they're very likely, unless a miraculous change of history and trends here happens, they're eventually going to probably kill more Israelis than the Israelis that were released in the hostage deal. Think about that.
Yeah,
like the
makes sense.
We're releasing hundreds of leaders of terrorists. We're getting in return a couple dozen at this point, hostages. They're going to directly be responsible for the death of more Israelis once they're released.
That's true.
Ken.
Yeah, so are the hostages worth it? That's a tough question.
That's
a very tough question.
Exactly
Impossible question.
No, it's not impossible. It's impossible unless you're in leadership. It's impossible on a human level, on an emotional level. On a leadership level, it's the kind of conversations you have to have. And it's also I'd say this differently, in the art of negotiation, which our government is not a master of. Let's be honest here.
Definitely not. The Iranians are mastering this field for sure.
Yeah, because in negotiations, when you go in, you have to be willing to pull the bluff all the way till the end, even at a high expense. And we're never willing to walk away from the negotiation table. The Hamas always are. The Hezbollah always are. The Palestinian Authority, they have no trouble saying, we don't mind if the house burns down, we're still going to blow the deal. The Israelis never do that. And in this deal, we went to the table with the notion in advance of whatever happens, we're going to release a ridiculous amount of terrorists in return for a very small amount of Israeli citizens. Everyone knew that was going to happen going into the negotiation.
Just talking about amounts of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons. You know that after this war started, like basically now, there are more Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails than what there were before October 7? Did you know this number?
Yeah.
Israel published the numbers yesterday. We have like about, 20,000?
More or less.
More now.
Yeah, but that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense because of the war. And yet, Hamas claims victory against Israel. So that's very interesting that how the facts don't support anything that they're saying. So they say, we released our prisoners, even though we will release, if this deal is completed, 1,900
even after the
prisoners.
Deal. Yeah.
We will still have 18,000 more Palestinian prisoners than what we had in Israeli prisons before October 7th began, because of the war, because we have many prisoners and terrorists that we captured into Israeli prisons. So it's very, just to have the numbers clear here on the table. With this exchange and release of prisoners from Israeli prisons, we still have a lot more prisoners than what we had before this war started. So Hamas even didn't win this part that they're claiming to releasing their prisoners from Israel. Did I make it clear?
No, I understand what you're saying. It's like on a moral level, like my desire is always...
I don't want to have Palestinian prisoners at all.
I don't want to have any Palestinian prisoners at all. It's like we're forced into this never-ending cycle of having to arrest these terrorists because their society breeds these vicious men. And look, and just to frame this, who are the people that are in Israeli prisons? Like, who are these men? Who are these men and women? They are people, and I intentionally say men and women because we have also female terrorists. They're women who walk up to a civilian, and we're not talking about like gunfire, even though gunfire requires some kind of like moral flexibility. We're talking that they take a knife and they're willing
screwdriver.
A screwdriver, and they start stabbing civilians on the street. That's a level of violence that some of these people carry out. They have no trouble doing the most brutal, violent things. We're talking about Nukhba terrorists. People, so again,
they're more trained,
October 7th, there were, there's no exact number, let's say between 2,500 to 3,500 well-trained terrorists that took part in the raid of October 7th from Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip into Israel. Many of those people are in Israeli prison now or deceased.
Yes.
And those people are, they look at them and say, oh, these are freedom fighters. No, they're not. They're people who came with the intention of murdering children and women.
And they did.
And they did. Those are the people that are in Israeli prisons. They're the Hamas leaders and cell leaders of crime families in Judea and Samaria who for generations carried out acts of violence against Israeli civilians and against other Palestinians. We'll get to this in the list.
This is an important point, that Hamas is also fighting internally against other Palestinian factions to gain control of the Gaza Strip, of Judea and Samaria, and there is a civil war within the Palestinian society, especially in Judea and Samaria now, between the Palestinian Authority, the Fatah, and Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and other terrorist organizations, either supported by Iran or by the West and other places.
And Hamas, and so remember on Saturday, we have the last release of hostages, the 4 young women from the Gaza Strip, and they parade them around the Gaza Strip, and they have this whole ceremony while they're pardoning them.
They need to sign this, like Kezadim al-Qassam Brigade will pardon you for the crimes.
For your crimes.
Yes.
And what they're trying to do there, aside from like the show of victory and stuff like that, is try to create some kind of equation where their morals are equivalent to those of the Israeli country.
They're legal, they are doing something, and they give them these, goodie bags with pictures of them from captivity, from in the tunnels, and
I felt that our soldiers, below they willing to do, like Hamas tried to show off, and he was sure that those soldiers will get up and be like quiet, and they took their hands up, and in the photos at least, it looked like our soldiers are winners.
Yeah, and also all the Hamas terrorists had their faces masked with sunglasses. They really were afraid that we will identify them.
Throwing flowers on them.
Confetti.
Listen, I want to be honest about something, because we're always praying, we're winning. We have a moral issue, and our issue is we're hypersensitive as a society to the death of everyone, but specifically our people, and also the idea of hostages from our people. And let's also just say this: when you zoom out, not every country operates in the same way. In fact, most countries around the world, Western countries included, don't operate in a way where they're willing to sacrifice everything to release hostages, because the price we pay for this kind of deal is incredibly high and incredibly painful for our people.
Yeah.
And we're going to pay for this big time in the future.
For 20 years, we're going to pay for it.
We're going to pay. These people are going to go back to murdering. They're going to go back to leading terrorist organizations. There's no question about it. It's just a question of when and how. We know what's going to happen. So again, that's on the table, and we're not playing the same moral game as Hamas. Hamas took captive people that were innocent and soldiers that were operating legally, and were releasing in return people that are murderers of multiple Israelis and multiple Palestinians, people whose entire, people whose entire religion and faith system and operating system is of death and destruction. There is no moral equivalence between the people that are being released. That has to be said.
Yeah, also you can see it within the educational system in the Gaza Strip and in Judea and Samaria. That's what they teach their children for a very young age. They have AK-47s, machine guns, so the kids can practice how to kidnap Israeli soldiers for this reason, from a young age, how to maneuver within tunnels, how to identify the soldiers, which one is more valuable than the other, and all these things that you shouldn't teach young children at school.
Yeah.
On top of that, they also keep the bombs, the weapons underneath the schools and other civilian buildings.
Yeah.
This is who we are dealing with.
So
it's important to remember that.
Yeah,
because now, like the media, we have a ceasefire, so they're trying to compare us and them.
Exactly.
This is a very bad thing.
like
There's no comparison.
There is no comparison.
There's no comparison.
So when is the Judea and Samaria piece airing? Is it this weekend?
This week.
Okay. So we just spent, you and I, or actually all of us, some time in northern Judea, and we were talking about, and this is going to air, I guess, tomorrow or the next day. Anyway, one of the days of this weekend.
If they will subscribe, they could get a notification.
This is a good opportunity for you to make sure you do subscribe so you can see this content I'm about to reference. So here's what's about to happen. We spent time explaining what's happening in Judea and Samaria and tying that into like this conversation.
Yeah.
And one of the people, this guy, I'm showing it to my camera, your camera, I guess it's going to be on the screen, You remember his face, Yair. I remember his face.
Zubaydah.
Yeah, Zkhali Azbeidi. He is a arch terrorist that lived in the city of Jenin.
Yeah.
A man that was arrested multiple times by the Israelis, by the Israeli government or military apparatus. He's a man that multiple times, was involved at shooting at Israeli civilians and killing Israeli civilians, who is a leader of other terrorists. He's a rallying cry for other terrorists.
Yeah, very charismatic.
Yeah.
He knows how to manipulate the media. He knows how to rally the factions.
Yes.
He knows the internal political, players within the Palestinian people. And he also escaped already from an Israeli prison and then was captured a few days later.
He tried,
But he escaped. We caught him a few days later.
Anyway, so this is the kind of guy that's being released.
Yeah.
He's one of these people. And for the Palestinians, and we'll go back to this later, for the Palestinians, these are kind of freedom fighters, and I'm giving air quotes if you're listening to this on the podcast, the kind of freedom fighters that are not actually freedom fighters. They're mass murderers and terrorists. They're destroyers of nations and people who they're calling for the release of. And it reminds me, you look at the New Testament story of the crucifixion. You have the leadership of the Jewish people in Jerusalem. They're calling for the release of Barnabas.
Yes.
They're calling for the release of a convicted felon in place of Christ.
Yeah.
And you look at this here. So you could be calling for the release of virtuous people, but they're not really held in Israeli prisons. You're calling for the release of murderers. And these are the heroes that you're presenting. And I think they're doing something very tricky and very dishonest here with this thing. They do many tricky and dishonest things. This is another one of them.
Pretty good at that, yeah.
Where they're trying to create a moral comparison between the likes of Zkhali Azbeidi and others that are in Israeli prisons and other freedom fighters that were held in prison, the likes of Nelson Mandela, the likes of Alexei Navalny, Russian opposition leader, people that were held in prison and then released, or held in prison, in Navalny's case that was recently allegedly murdered by the Russian government in a very brutal way, trying to create some kind of moral comparison of like, these people are like them. They're not like them.
Yeah,
They're not the same people.
No, definitely. And this is like a never-ending circle, Mati. I mean, how are we going to even get out of the situation in the 50, 100 years from now?
Narrative
right?
change.
It's like, you need to change the education system to re-educate an entire generation.
Oh, couple.
I think 2, 3 generations now. It's very...
So both me and you have seen the inside of Palestinian and Gazan schools and houses. And all their posters throughout the cities, their poster boys and girls are the
terrorists.
Are the terrorists.
Yeah.
In our homes when we were young,
we have soccer players, basketball players, NBA players.
We have athletes, maybe pop stars, depending on what age you grew up in.
I saw that in 2009 in Gaza, that on notebooks there is the stickers with shaheeds, with the dead terrorists on them.
But not just there. Everywhere you go in Palestinian society, be it a roundabout on a road, it's the roundabout of the shaheeds. It's the martyrs. It's the shaheeds. Martyrs.
So-called martyrs. The terrorists.
It's the underpass of the mukawama, the resistance. It's always against. It's always negative. It's always against.
Muhammad said that the death it's like a sting of a mosquito.
Yeah. Well, that's the kind of thing that a terrorist organization that wants young people to die on its behalf would use.
Yeah,
it's the kind of lies that they would use. They're cultivating a culture of death, and it's not sacrifice for virtue; it's sacrifice for destruction. That's the kind of religion that they're cultivating in their society.
Yeah.
So we see this, and they just systematically peddle this mindset and this thought process of like, let's bring up these people that are, let's idolize them. Every school book that you look in, every interchange, every road, you have these posters of the shaheeds, and these are men and women who've murdered innocent Israelis or innocent Palestinians or both.
Yeah, and that's also the top of the society. Just imagine the Gaza Strip is not only, being trained militarily by Hamas. Hamas is also the health ministry, is also the school system, the education system, the working society. So if you want to have a job, like a good job within Gaza, you need to be either a tunnel digger, a terrorist, which is the highest level, a commander or something like that within the Hamas brigades, or maybe a rocket scientist, meaning the rockets that are fired in Israel,
Yeah.
not, Elon Musk X rockets that are flown to space.
After the last couple of weeks, he's a tricky example too.
Yeah, definitely.
We're not sure what he's going to use his rockets for. Anyway.
So this is the situation. It's very hard, to get out of it, because what can you do? It's not like you're going to go into Greenpeace in the Gaza Strip or something like that. You can't be part of anything while Hamas is still governing the civil society in Gaza. This is a loophole that will never end unless Hamas completely is out of the picture, and then a government that is not corrupt, is not keen on terrorism, and does not want to destroy Israel is governing that society, these people. I don't see that happening, anytime soon. Also, with all the proposals that we hear from the Trump administration and from international coalitions of rebuilding the Gaza Strip, of international monitoring, it doesn't seem like anything will change.
You showed me before about, and taking us back about the guys that getting out, and you highlighted one of the stories about Muhammad Atala.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad guys there.
Marwan Barghouti?
No, Marwan Barghouti isn't on the list. He's an example of a freedom fighter, quote unquote freedom fighter that they're idolizing. But so here's just a sample of who these people are. So you have a man named Muhammad Atala. He's a well-known terrorist. He's behind multiple terrorist attacks. He's a leader of other terrorists. He's a man that's indoctrinating Palestinian society to a death culture.
Planned bomb.
Yeah, and everything, all the jazz that goes with that, bombs and gunfire, etc. But he's also a man who murdered at least one Palestinian woman. You know about this. At least one Palestinian woman for the suspicion of her collaborating with Israel. So again, he's not murdering Israelis, and that's also not fair game. But it's his own people, his own neighbors that he's murdering for the suspicion of. But he's also a man, and this is a whole different story that's not worth going into in this conversation about how our system failed in doing this. He raped a prison guard, an Israeli female prison guard when he was in prison.
Yeah.
And it's indicative of two things. One, that our system failed on that level, and there's no excuse about it. But two, of how lax the treatment that these people receive in Israeli prisons is. And it really is. It's a point of contention within Israeli society, because people are mad not because they're getting food and a bed. They're mad because they look at them and they're like, these people aren't actually in prison at all. They're living in it's like one long summer.
It's a resort, yeah.
It's one summer camp where they're cooking together and having cookouts and having, parties and Quran studying lessons, and they're going to the university. It's like, these guys are murderers. Why are you letting them live such comfortable lives? This doesn't exist, by the way, in other countries. Prisoners in the U.S., which is, I guess, an extreme example of the prison system, but prisoners in the U.S. don't get these kind of conditions. And they're not people who've been murdering people on the streets in the U.S.
Yeah.
In most cases, at least. They go to maximum security prisons. This is what we do with these people, which needs to change according to the opinion of many Israelis. So Muhammad Atala is one of them.
Yeah, and who's the other one? Was Fouad
Kawasme.
So he's in charge of the kidnapping and murder of 3 Israeli teens.
Yes.
That started another operation in the Gaza Strip.
No, not the Gaza Strip.
No, in
Judea and Samaria.
So what's it called? Shuvut Banim?
Shuvu Banim.
Shuvu Banim.
Yeah.
This is
Return the Boys or something.
3 years ago?
Terrible story.
Oh, it was like already 2014.
I am like...
Yeah. 11 years ago.
I have no concept of time. Anyway, so the reason I highlighted his name is because the family is a family of terrorists. So, and we've talked about this in the past many times. I'll just repeat it briefly. Hamas operates through the clans. It doesn't operate across society, because the Palestinian society in Judea and Samaria, and definitely in the Gaza Strip, is still tribally led.
Yes.
So you work through what they call the Hamula, with Hamula just as a word for
the family.
Clan family.
Like a big family.
So in Hebron, which is Hebron in English, there's a large family called the Kawasme family. The Kawasme family is a family of terrorists. They probably do also some other things, but they're known for their acts of terrorism.
Yeah.
This man, Fouad Kawasme, is one of the heads of the family. He's sitting in Israeli prison and is about to be released, or was released, I'm not sure.
No, going to be.
Going to be.
About to be released.
Threat level very high.
Is this in this round?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This week.
This week.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be released this week. And very high level threat. Again, the family is a family that executes high level terrorist attacks. They're a armed family. They're a Hamas family. They're a family who, while I was in this region last year, they carried out one of the most bloody terrorist attacks on the tunnel roadblock.
Yeah, where you drive every day. It's like 5 minutes from here.
Yeah, and
it's not like far from here.
I remember the briefings, without going into too much detail, where before the terrorist attack happened, everyone knew that if a big terrorist attack happened, it will happen from that family, not from there. It will happen from that family. This is how, you need to understand, this is what the culture is. You know that the people of this family, instead of making olives, or maybe they do, I don't know, but instead of like being known for their olives, their cuisine,
known for their terrorism,
for the philosopher, for the doctor, for the the researcher in the family, they're known for being a family of terrorists. And indeed, one of the deadliest terrorist attacks that happened in that area in the early months of the war was a member of this family, the Kawasma family, and it was notable because the family only takes part in well-funded and well-organized terrorist attacks. So this is, again, this is the level of the people. He is one of the tribal leaders.
Let's go to another one that is about to be released. We have Naji Nasser, and his background is a long-term Hamas operative specializing in weapon smuggling. Crimes that he committed was coordinated attacks that resulted in significant casualties. And the threat level that Israel stated on him is moderate to high. Okay, this is another guy.
What a future hold from that? Let's all those hundreds terrorists that coming out, 65% of them, something like that, getting back.
No, I thought it was 85%.
85% of getting back to places that they can still operate in terror. So how?
But it's not just that, Tomer. Yair just mentioned this. Look, these societies, it's not like you. Forget the personal level for a second. The society calls for and it sanctifies and it puts on a pedestal acts of terrorism and violence. Like that is the highest calling. Is violence and martyrdom against the Jews and resistance to the Jewish people and the Jewish state. That's one. Two, it's like saying, look, Bashar al-Assad, now that he's no longer the dictator of Syria, he can always go back. What was he, a dentist or optometrist?
No, optometrist, like eye doctor.
Optometrist.
Eye doctor, yeah.
He can now he can go back to his thriving practice of being an optometrist. No, he is a people killer and he's a terrorist and he will remain a people killer and a terrorist. And the same goes to these people. It's not like they're going to say, well, I guess my days as a terrorist are over.
That's not a new profession.
I'm going to pursue my passion of pottery and we'll see how that goes. That's not happening. These guys, what they are, their vocation, their religion, their faith, their ideology is all one and single. It is violence and death against the Jewish people. And that's, by the way, the problem with that whole equation is that doesn't change if the state of Israel ceases to exist.
It will happen just against other Palestinians or against other nations here or against the West, against Europe, against the United States, against Christians. That's what it is.
I'm going to be careful in the words.
The beauty about it, I think, that we represent the other side, the side that care about our own people, are willing to pay prices. What is the good side out of that?
Of them being released?
No, us taking this.
Well, we value life, okay? This is something I think that is very important to remember. And this war proves again and again that the clear definition between good and evil, and between standing for life or standing for death. And I think it's very clear that all these terrorist organizations, also the Islamic Republic of Iran, they don't care about their own people. They use them as human shields. They don't care about a future, about educations. Everything is tools to achieve their goal of destroying Israel, of sowing destruction, death, and chaos in this region. And on the other hand, you have, I would say, people that have a vision. And I think it's more than a vision, it's faith in God, in something bigger, in a future, in the hope that one day our kids will not need to go and fight in order to defend ourselves, but just have a normal future of building a family and living in this nation in peace.
I'd say you could go one step further. In the timeline that we live in right now, I'm not talking about distant past and what the Islamic Empire did and etc. It's a whole different history lesson for a different YouTube channel. In the reality we live in today, the outcome of radical Islamism, be it Sunni or Shia, is always one.
Yeah.
It's death and destruction. And there is no exception to that rule, full stop, with absolutely no exceptions to that. That always will be the outcome. And unless you change the operating system of the people that are involved in this, especially on the leadership level, that always will be the outcome. If tomorrow the state of Israel ceases to exist, the Hamas will continue with the exact same trajectory. They'll just find another victim. It'll be internal, it'll be external, it doesn't matter what. They will just find another victim to the destruction, to the death, to the devastation that they bring. There's never going to be a day where they turn around and say, look, we're done with the whole killing and tunneling and bomb thing. Look, we've always thought that flowers would be a nice touch for the Gaza Strip. Let's pursue that. Let's take our money and divert it to that. That day and conversation are never happening.
Never happen.
Never happening. The same for the terrorists that are being released within Israel. There is no day where they say, like, look, we believe we were wrong, we're going to switch. It takes an act of God for those people to see repentance. And until you see that, they're always going to go back to the same place. And that creates two really big problems. For us as Israeli society, engaging with that level of people who are sort of programmed to death and destruction, it forces you to use violence, it forces you to use a heavy hand against them on an ongoing basis, and that in turn is negative for our society because we have to exact that level of, again, punishment against these people. Are terrible and they deserve it, but we have to engage with it.
You don't have that level of compassion towards them. That's not good.
Yeah, so that's one. Secondly is it doesn't change the future outcomes of our relationship with them.
Yeah.
Unless we're able to break the cycle, you can't say once and for all, but at least to start chipping away at the cycle of that, you're going to keep repeating, keep engaging. If it's not these guys, then it's their sons. And if it's not their sons, it's their grandsons.
Yeah, you need to create some kind of coexistence system that, both sides benefit or depend on each other for a day-to-day life here. It's very tough.
Where do you find hope in that?
In that?
No, in the future of that.
In all the future. Listen, I personally find hope that in every situation that I have no control of, I find hope in God. Because, I have nothing to do about this situation. It's not like I'm going to vote for this guy or this guy and there's going to be peace in this region. It's not like an international coalition is going to force a peaceful solution on the Gaza Strip and change the narrative of this region. So in this situation, if I have no hope in mankind or in men at all, I can basically just, pray for the situation and trust in God. And the nice things that what we see about Jesus and about the Messiah coming back to Jerusalem, and that is that one of his names is Prince of Peace. He's not coming as a war hero on a tank or a horse to, conquer this region again and create this empire of the Jewish people, of the people of Israel. He's coming as a Prince of Peace to sit on his throne in Jerusalem, the city right here. And I think that's very encouraging to know that we are serving a God that wants peace, that is a positive God and does not want destruction. This is something that we need, I think, more than everything else in this region. Hope.
I have a lot of thoughts. I'm going to try to organize them. Look, again, we sort of delved into end time theology, and we're promised a couple things. We're promised that God will give us peace, but it doesn't mean that life is going to be easy. And we're promised that evil will continue to exist until the end. And what this situation gives us, and I think this is always an important place to go to on a personal level too, is you have to be true with the facts. It's let's say you fail, you have a problem. I have kids in school, you do too. Your kid fails 4 times in the math exam again and again and again. And we'll say, well, what are you going to do for this not to happen again? I don't know. I hope next time it's different.
Give him a calculator.
Yeah, no.
Just kidding.
So, I hope the next time he does better. It's like, no, unless you pivot your behavior and change the sort of the pattern, you're going to keep repeating the same thing. And for us as Israelis, on the most practical level, if God comes through with a miracle, great.
Amazing, yeah.
Great. But we can't time that and we can't control that.
We need to defend ourselves.
So, yeah, exactly. And you have to have a real conversation. And if your conversation goes like, look, these people are known to be repeat offenders of the most heinous behavior that's known to mankind. They're mass murderers. They call for destruction. They love blowing up in buses full of people. They kill their own. They kill ours. Let's hope that next time they don't do that.
Yeah, let's hope that now they'll be good.
That's insanity.
Yeah, exactly.
That's insanity. You have to look at the reality as it is and look at this list of evil, villainous men and say, I know who this man is. I know he's going to go back to the same behavior pattern.
So I should prepare.
Yeah, and I should prepare, and I should
do my best.
I should be strong where I need to be strong, and I should be vigilant where I need to be vigilant. I should keep the people in reserves and strengthen the army as we are doing actively right now.
Yeah.
Because we know that this is going to happen, and when it happens, we're going to be ready next time, because we can't look at pure evil in the face and say, "Look, I hope they come to see reality as we do." That's not happening.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Mati, I want to ask maybe our viewers from the Philippines here, if you have some questions you want to ask us on this topic, and we can answer live. And if you want to come, you can also speak to the microphone. Don't be shy. A bit shy. No questions?
No, coming from the Philippines, number one, we are very grateful that you are saying...
Do you want to come here so that they can hear you on the microphone? Come next to me.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Very nice of you putting people on the spot, Yair.
They thought that they won't be on screen. Come, just speak to the microphone so they can hear you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Coming from the Philippines, and with all of the news that you are saying, actually, you are educating us.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, firstly, I want to say thank you to every one of you that are here, that are working silently at the back. We want to say thank you because you're educating my country. And we have been watching you, and we have been watching, like what you said, we cannot compare, but we are really comparing because we wanted to see honesty here on the news. The question is, with all of these things that has been going on, like, because we are also thinking about ourselves with the release, how do you keep up to protect? I know it's difficult, but how do you keep up and how do you protect your children and the future? Because you can only do this. You cannot do everything. How do you keep it? I mean, definitely you will have all the wisdom that God has given you with this because you're a special country, but really, literally, how do you?
In what sense? On a security?
Security, everything.
Security?
Yeah, definitely security.
Yeah, it's a very big and complicated question for a parent in general. I think how to protect them and shield them, keep them innocent, positive, while at the same time, vigilant and aware to the situation of the threats of our neighbors and the Palestinian people and these terrorist groups that want to attack us.
Mati,
so how do you protect, Mati?
Yeah, exactly.
You just share with them. You don't shield them from that.
That's I think the reality in the end is that there's no hiding the truth from or the reality from kids.
Yeah.
If they don't hear it from you in a clear word, they're going to hear it otherwise. Let's be clear here. Living in the existence we've lived through in the last 15 months, but also just growing up in Israel in general, it takes a toll from people, and it comes with a price. This country is not for the faint of heart, and it's not for the faint of mind or soul or spirit. That said, there is a factor that makes everything easier, which is if you have a strong answer to the question of why, then life is a lot easier for you.
Yeah.
And the people of Israel
definitely have a why.
Have a very strong why, exactly. And so I think even for kids, reframing why we're here in this land completely changed the conversation. Because you have an answer to why do they hate us? Because God is trying to do something unique through what's happening to these people. Why do they attack us? Because something unique is happening here and they're jealous of it on a fundamental religious reason, and it's a reason that's illogical too. The kids here, if they'll hear it. They have access to the internet. They have access to friends who have access to the internet. One way or another, once they're old enough to have a conversation with their peers, they'll know what's happening around them. It's just better that they hear it from us in clear words. And I've had to sit down and have some very bizarre conversations with my kids in recent months. I've tried to explain
at bomb shelters.
After
bomb shelters.
Exactly. After we run to the bomb shelter again and again, they'll say, well, why is so and so bombing us? So, this time it's actually someone else. I'll say, who are those?
Why do they hate us?
Why are the flip-flop wearing Houthis from Yemen? Why are they firing rockets at? We need that on our merchandise store, by the way.
Flip-flop shirts.
Okay.
We'll do a shirt like that.
It's down with Houtistan flip-flops. Anyway, that was a joke. There's no country called Houtistan.
Yeah.
But to our point, is there's no hiding it, and faith and an understanding of the bigger picture is the only thing that can really hold things together.
Yeah, definitely. Basically, the fact that God gave this land to the people of Israel, and the enemy hates that, because that proves to the entire world that God is faithful, and this is a spiritual war.
Yeah.
And the enemy wants to create a separation between mankind and the faithfulness of God.
Yeah, but
that's why we're here.
Also, let's be honest here. Going to war, and I'm saying this to you too, Charlotte, and your friends. Going to war as a country, there's a price you pay. There's no two ways around it.
Yeah,
Israeli society is and will pay a price for this. We always say in Israel that, and we say
what doesn't kill us makes us stronger.
What kills us makes our mom stronger. It's very sad that we have to joke about these kind of things. And I've heard this said by outsiders, that they look at it and say, like, your society is post-traumatic in the way it jokes about like heavy events that have taken place, and said, well, what else are we supposed to do at this point?
Yeah, it's the only way to cope with this very, very sad and serious situation.
Yeah, but I'd also say, like, on a spiritual level, there's another reality, which is that God promises to comfort those who are of a broken heart.
Yeah.
But to be able to be comforted if you have a broken heart, you have to admit the fact that your heart is broken.
Open your heart to God's comfort.
Yeah, and you can if you're not willing to admit weakness and pain, and it's like this very like tenuous relationship, like, because we're in a time of war. We're looking at these like very like depressing facts. All these murders are being released, and the hostages, and all our country sits every weekend now, and we're like, we're
waiting for them to see the videos of them being released
at the edge of our seat.
Can they walk?
At the edge of the seat, waiting. There's this collective, like sigh of relief when we see them. This collective moment of pain when we're talking about the ones who weren't released. It's tense, and you have to just admit the fact that it's happening. You just have to be emotionally mature and open about the fact that it is painful and it is scary. And we just know that we have to trust in God to prevail, and we have to trust the leadership, even though they're flawed, to do the right thing when they can, and that's it.
And God is faithful, because if you look at Israel, the people of Israel, considering and comparing to other people around the world, despite all the wars, we are happy. The people of Israel are a happy people, happy nation, and positive people. And you can compare it even to countries that have never been into a war, or not a lot of wars. I mean, the people of Israel are positive, are happy, because they have a goal, they have a vision.
Yeah.
And I think it's because, God is really comforting the people of Israel.
There's one more thing in that, which is, if you look at it, it's easy to fall into victimhood on a personal level.
Yeah.
Woe is me, like all these terrible things happen, all these terrible things happen to me and stuff like that. And if you follow biblical storytelling and philosophy, you can't experience joy without like understanding suffering. Definitely. And you can't experience, like the full gratitude of being given something without experiencing loss. And you can't experience like the gratitude and the joy in winning something without having experienced loss.
Yeah,
and it sort of has to live together.
You can't have complete faith in God until you give up all your personal abilities to change the situation.
Yeah, until you've experienced doubt.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe where we end, because it's easy to take this whole conversation to a place of doubt and negativity. Oh no, these terrible terrorists are being released, which is true. They are terrible men. They need to be, dealt with. They need to be tracked.
Definitely.
Part of the reason that I'm going back to reserves, such as many others, is because of the fact that the war in Judea and Samaria is far from over.
Just beginning.
The war in Gaza Strip is not over yet. The war in with Hezbollah, not over yet. Houthis, not over. Iranians, not over. New enemy on the block, or new kids on the block.
Syria, whoever is Julani, Salam, whatever his name is.
The Syrians, the Turks, who knows, the Egyptian fleet. Every other day
there's a new guy in the block.
There's a new oppressor that rises up, like in the news. There's always going to be something negative.
Yeah.
And you can look at it and say, okay, I don't know how we're going to deal with it. I know we'll be fine.
Yeah.
At the same time, you can look back and say, look, we've been saved miraculously by God again and again and again.
Thousands of years.
Yeah. It's just going to happen again.
It's just a new miracles. It's actually very nice, because, when you talk to people, you think, oh, God used to make amazing miracles only in the Bible times, but separating the Dead Sea and the Red Sea, and then rescuing the people of Israel from Egypt against all these odds. But it's happening today. We're fighting 7 different fronts, huge countries, hundreds of millions of people, and we're a tiny country in Israel, and we're still here. God is doing miracles today, these days, huge miracles, bigger than the time of the Bible.
But we're not alone,
Yeah.
and that's important to say. Unlike what the media
Yeah.
likes to portray, especially when it relates to Israel, there are countless people around the world, I'd say a good portion of the world's population, that is pro-Israel. And by saying,
Thank God.
when I say pro-Israel, I mean they're pro-God's plan, they're pro-biblical narrative, they're pro, the good of Judeo-Christian values. A very substantial portion of
We have 3 of them here.
Yeah, we have several of them here in the studio with us. Thank you for coming. And there are countless others around the world, and especially in North America, who as people, as groups, and as governments stand with the people of Israel.
Yeah.
So there is hope in that sense. And there is, in the same way that we've seen unexpected evil, I also believe that we're going to see unexpected good in the near future in this region. So that's something that gives me hope.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Matti. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, Tomer. Have a great weekend. And guys, keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Share, like, subscribe. If you want to support us, click this donate button here on YouTube or go to our website, tbnisrael.com. Have a great weekend and keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for being with us. Hello, this is Matti here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/.